Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you all. You know, I've been thinking a little lately about how our perceptions of the world can be so subjective. I know that mine are. I think as I get a little older and gain more experience, I see more how that plays out, and I try to be aware of how subjective my perceptions are. For example, I've noticed I have a tendency to kind of project my feelings on other people. If things are going really well and I'm having a great day and everything seems bright and cheerful, I'll say, wow, everybody's bright and cheerful. Everybody's having a great day. There's something in the air. And if I'm having kind of a bad day and everything feels really down, if I feel really down, I don't have that much energy, I'll say, wow, there's something going on today. It seems like everybody's having kind of a hard time. So I try to watch that. Try not to let my own perceptions color my ideas of what's going on with everyone too much. And I also notice that I have a bit of a tendency sometimes to speak for other people. I might say we a lot and talk about the Sangha and how we're this way or we're that way, without really being sure that it's true. And usually whenever I say we are this way or we are that way, it's not going to be true of everyone. So that's something I need to work on too. But having said all that, I would like to say, and I could be wrong, that things seem to be going really well for the Sangha right now. It's summer and it's been really great. We had a nice respite from the heat. It's coming back a little bit, kind of feel it right now, right? But we've had some really wonderful days here. Wednesday night, during poetry class, I'm teaching a class in Zen poetry now. During the last half of the class, which would have been about 8 o'clock, everyone went outside to kind of wander around and maybe write some haiku. And so I wandered down to the lake, and there was a beautiful breeze coming off the lake, and the sun was setting, kind of a yellow and blue sunset. And I looked down the shore of the lake, and it looked like about every 30, 40 feet or so was an individual or a group of people just looking at the lake, just slowing down and watching the sunset. And of course, taking a few pictures. But it was really sweet. And we're back in our building, and the yard is looking really good. I can't believe how far we've come. In just a year. It's like we had this big scar from the construction, and it's really healing now. And we're back together practicing. And I think usually in the summer we have kind of a slowdown, but lately we've had more people coming, really good attendance, maybe not quite as much this morning. Wouldn't you know it, the morning when I want to talk about the Great Spirit, it's like, well, not quite so many people, but generally, I think we have had more people for most of our program. And there's something that I've recently said, I think in meetings, both to the priests and the board, which is I feel like we're in another transition time here in the Sangha. And it's not a real obvious transition time. It's quieter than the others. When we closed the center suddenly due to COVID and suddenly put all of our programming online, that was an obvious transition. And then later, when we cleaned up after the construction and moved back into our building and changed all of our programming from all online to all hybrid, that was another really big transition. It was huge. But this transition, I think, is a little quieter, and I'm offering my own observation here for what it's worth. I feel like we're kind of really moving back in now and kind of starting over and trying to recover some of the things that we've lost. Because we've looked around, and here where I say we, I mean the priests and some other experienced Sangha members. And we've seen that during that long period of closure and the move-in and everything, that we've kind of lost a few things. Some of the tightness and the predictability of the forms that we use, the bowing, how you enter and leave the zendo, things like that. And Sundays don't have so many forms. It's pretty casual. But the morning sittings and the retreat do, and they can be pretty precise. And we do that because it's helpful to us, helpful to be mindful. And we're not rigid about the forms. I don't think we ever are, but we value them. And a lot of the people, a lot of folks who regularly attend Zen Center now weren't here prior to the closure. And many of those who were are a little rusty. For instance, oryoki, the way we eat formally during sessions, I don't know, I think it's probably been 2.5 years since I did oryoki, and we'll do it again in December at Rohatsu. So I don't know, I think I'll need a refresher along with everyone else. Then you add that to the changes we've made because we're in a new space. You know, we're in kind of a mirror image, a mirror larger image of the old Zendo. So we've had to figure out how things work here and how we integrate the technology and everything. So the priests have been meeting and we've been talking about forms a little bit, and we're going to talk to the Doans too. And we'll see if maybe we can gently move toward a space of everyone doing the same forms in the same way. And I can assure you it'll be a gentle process. We don't go around sort of, correcting people here. Basically, the approach is we model the behavior and people pick it up and we reach a place where there's harmony. We might suggest a little refinement here and there. We call it a refinement. I think this is a good time to do that work because there is that good spirit right now, and I feel like things have settled down a bit. And when I talk about a good spirit, I know that there are always some individuals who are deeply struggling. It's going to happen in a Sangha of this size, so I never want to make like really blanket statements about everything being great. And I know the world situation is still very, very difficult. Although I do have more hope for our democracy than I had a few months ago. And COVID, though still pretty bad, seems to be getting better. And that's good. It felt so good for me to take my mask off. I still wear it sometimes. If I wasn't speaking today, I would probably be wearing it for safety. And also, I think it kind of makes a statement that it's perfectly okay to wear a mask here. There's absolutely no pressure not to. And I hope that we'll be able to continue this mask optional policy for forever, but you never know. You never know what might happen. And we could reach the point where we would have to go back, and we have to be prepared for that. But one thing I'd like to focus on this morning in terms of things going well is priest training. And that's nothing new. That's something that's been going on pretty quietly and pretty steadily since Katagiri ordained his first student. At the last board meeting, one of the board members asked, I wonder if the Sangha really knows that this is a priest training center and what that means and how that works. And I thought maybe not, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I don't think we ever planned to become a priest training center here, and I don't think that term was even thought of in the early days. Katagiri ordained 13 people who went on to ordain others, and there are now 80 to maybe 100 priests in Katagiri's lineage all over the country. And all the priests here at MZMC are in Katagiri's lineage. Tim Burkett was very open to ordaining people, I think starting in 2003, which was 19 years ago. And so there was that first wave of ordainees were ordained in 2003 and 2005, and they helped him set up a training program for subsequent ordainees. And I think that the priest training program really enhances the experience of people who practice here. I have heard the question, not lately, but in the past, of why there's so much focus on priests, as if training priests somehow takes away from the experiences of lay people. And I have a couple of responses to that. First, priests don't get a lot of glory, especially in the first 5 years or so. It's about serving the Sangha day in, day out, in really quiet ways, in many ways unseen. And they make a lifetime commitment to doing this. So they're in the kitchen, planning retreats, scheduling volunteers, cleaning the bathrooms, organizing other people to clean the bathrooms, setting up events like initiation, responding to all kinds of requests from me to do this or that. Trainees serve as temple officers like Ino, Tenzo, work leader, Chiden. And these are enormous commitments of time. And it takes usually at a minimum 7 years for a person to go through the priest training program. And that's after going through initiation and practicing for 1 year as if they were ordained, as if they were a priest already. And during those 7 years, there's a lot of work and high expectations. And not only about serving the Sangha in direct ways, but about doing the inner work that's necessary and becoming educated about Zen and how to teach them. So in my view, the priests serve the Sangha. We have a multiplicity of teaching voices and many people to go to for guidance and help. People can go to the person who resonates most with them. So becoming a priest is an awesome thing. It changes the course of your life. It's a joyful thing. It challenges you. If you've ever thought about priest training, you should talk to your mentor about it. It's not likely that anybody's going to suggest to you that you become a priest. You have to take the initiative. So under the Japanese Soto Zen model that we follow, the first formal step in this process is Zen initiation, formerly called Jukai. And that's where you work with a teacher and you sew a rakusu, like this one, only blue. And you take vows in front of the community. And many, many people in our Sangha have done that. We'll be doing this next in the summer and fall of 2023. And anyone who has a mentor here will be invited to participate in that. So you sew a blue rakusu for initiation. You sew a black one when you're ordained. And when you're ordained, then you are a priest, but you're also a trainee. And then you sew a brown one for Dharma transmission. And that means that you have permission to teach independently. You can ordain other people. You can start your own center. Katagiri's ordainees tended to go off and start their own centers. The priests we have now tend to stay, which I think is great. And some folks, I've heard it said, and I got to admit there's something to it, that this system we have is a bit hierarchical, because your progress is marked by these formal steps, by the color of your rakusu, and you display these. And I can understand, kind of the discomfort with marking formal steps on the path. Because of course, there's not going to be a perfect correlation between the color of the rakusu you have and your spiritual development. Some people never sew a rakusu and have a very deep practice that is stronger or as strong as the most advanced teachers. So we'll never have perfect congruence, but I think marking these formal steps is helpful. If I see that someone has a blue rakusu, I know that they've made a major commitment. They stuck with hand sewing for a good 40 hours. They have a teacher. If I see a black rakusu, I know I can trust that that person has made a certain commitment and is getting a certain kind of training. And I've heard people say there's no correlation whatsoever between taking these formal steps and deepening your practice. But I don't think that's true. If you go through initiation and you spend those 40 hours sewing and you take refuge in the Buddha with every stitch, you cannot help but be changed by that experience. You cannot help but learn some things about yourself and deepen your practice somewhat. And if you ordain and spend the 7 or more years in the program, and it can be a lot more years than 7, depending on the time you have to devote here, you can't help but deepen your practice. Bumping up against your fellow ordainees and encountering their rough edges and your own rough edges can't help but change you in a deep way. So there are many ways to deepen your practice, and these formal steps are one way. And it's certainly not the only way. And for those who aren't drawn to the formal steps, that's fine. We have a long tradition in Zen of lay persons like Vimalakirti and Layman Pang and Layman Pang's family who had a practice much deeper than the practice of many of the monks and ended up schooling the monks in different ways. So this argument, if I can call it that, about hierarchy, I think just reflects the old and constant argument between form and emptiness. Argument is an odd way to characterize it because ultimately our practice is about harmonizing form and emptiness. But it does seem like working out the relationship between the two is a never-ending thing that is at the heart of our practice. So form, the world of form, is where we do things like go to work and talk to our neighbors and build furniture. Emptiness, the world of emptiness, is where we see that all things are interconnected and have no individual reality of their own. Ultimately, form and emptiness are the same. They are two different perspectives. Form is emptiness, emptiness form. That's the heart of the Heart Sutra. And it corresponds to a way of being. You can be here in this bright, shiny world, the world of individual objects, and know at the same time that these objects don't exist independently. Both things are going on at once. And when we know this, we're awake. We kind of move in and out of awakeness, I think. And the question is, once you've seen emptiness, once you've seen that all of this really isn't real, and yet is real, how do you interact with stuff? A week ago, we had a guest teacher, Judith Regier, and I liked her talk a lot. She spoke about this old argument in terms of ascending and descending. I'm sure many of you heard it. And so I'm going to explain ascending and descending, and these words are mine, not hers, but I hope that what I say would be, that she would feel that they were consistent with what she said. Ascending is coming to an understanding through practice of the emptiness of things, that things are empty of an individual self, and they exist only in relation to other things. Descending is coming to an understanding, once you've really encountered emptiness, that we're still located here in this world of forms, and we have work to do here. Once we've awakened to emptiness, we can take our awakened mind into the world and act in a new way, act in the world to relieve suffering. And Judith said that Zen hasn't always been the best at dealing with the descending part. And I think that's true. There's been a misconception sometimes that knowing emptiness is all we need. That we find emptiness and we sort of rise above the things of this world and nothing bothers us and we're fine. So Zen hasn't always paid attention to things like the movement of energy in the body, healing trauma, social action. Judith said specifically that it hasn't always been real good in helping folks to clean up wreckage from their past. And I think this is a good message for Zen, and I think it would be more beneficial to pay more attention to these things. I think it's also to point out that things have changed a lot, things are continuing to change, and that for many teachers, this descending part is their focus. And I think it is for me. Sometimes I think that's all I ever talk about. It's not something ever planned. I never looked around and said, well, here's where Zen is deficient and here's what I need to talk about it. I think it just grew up organically. Action in the world is something I've always been drawn to. And Sangha building seems to be kind of deep in my bones. I just keep doing it. And I don't know where that came from exactly, but this memory came back to me when I was thinking about this talk from long, long ago, and it stuck with me for years. And that's when I was in, I think it was 4th grade, could have been 3rd grade, probably 4th grade, in elementary school in Dwight in southeastern North Dakota. That was a little school. There were about 65 kids in our school. I think there were 7 kids in the 4th grade. It was, grades 1 through 8. And we would play baseball or softball at recess. That's pretty much what everybody did. And we had a nice new school, but the old school was still standing. That was a school built by the WPA back in the 30s. And behind that old school was this really nice baseball diamond. And we went to play there one day, and the kids from the big room, which is what we called the 7th and 8th grade kids, were already there. So we couldn't play. So I said, let's make our own diamond. And we found a place where the ground was level enough and the grass was short enough. And we laid out a diamond using tin cans to mark the bases. And we had a really good game. And then we were walking back to the school building, I remember, afterwards. And I remember looking around and just noticing that we were all really having fun. And we were all in a really good mood. And it felt like we were being kind to each other and taking care of each other, which isn't all that rare, but you know how kids are at school or maybe even among your siblings, they can really be sniping at each other. But we had this good feeling. And I noticed that I thought I had something to do with that. And I could do even more, just a little word here, a little word there, a little encouraging, a little encouragement. You can really affect how people feel. And of course, that's not unique to me. We all do this, but that's just an early example. And I remember that as just being the coolest thing, that feeling. And I keep coming back to it. And many times in my life, I've deviated from it. I haven't always promoted harmony, but I love thinking about it. It's a little bit like performing a song or writing a poem or something like that. Things just kind of come together and you hit that wavelength where, folks are together. And so that's part of the descending part, I think, looking after that group harmony. So when I started my Zen practice, I think like many people, I concentrated on the ascending part. because above all, I wanted some relief from suffering. That's what brought me to Zen practice in a serious way, was suffering. I wanted some escape, really. And I had this idea of enlightenment, which was kind of escape from suffering, not embracing it. But then with years of practice, I began to concentrate more on action in the world, on the descending part. And I've continued to do that. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm right and other teachers are wrong. It just means that I have a different focus from them. One way to think about our practice and the stages we might go through is to look at the 10 ox herding pictures, which many of you are familiar with. The ox, roughly, and I say roughly because, I don't like to reduce these things to really simple concepts, but I guess I'm going to go ahead and do this. The ox roughly represents the mind that needs to be tamed. So in the beginning, the ox herder looks for the ox, sees the ox's footprint, and then sees the ox. And then he catches it. And then he cares for the ox until it's not wild anymore, which is also, you could say, taming the ox. And then he rides the ox home. Then the ox herder forgets about the ox. Then both ox and ox herder disappear. And finally, there's a return to the original place. Having disappeared, having awakened, having realized that there's no separation between things, the ox herder finds to his surprise that he's still here in this vivid world. That's the descending part. And what is the very last of the 10 ox herding pictures? Many of you know. The ox herder enters the marketplace with bliss bestowing hands. Now, I don't think I have bliss bestowing hands yet, but entering the market is my focus. Once we've tamed the ox of our mind and we've disappeared completely, and then we've come back, what do we do then? We go to the place where the people are and we see what needs to be done there. Other teachers focus on different things. They may focus on looking for the ox. Look, there is this practice, you can do it. Let me tell you about it. They may focus on taming the ox, doing that work. I read something in Crooked Cucumber, which is a wonderful biography of Suzuki Roshi written by David Chadwick. I read it twice, but it was a long time ago. I hope I have this story right. Suzuki nearly drowned in Tassajara Creek, came very close to drowning. And after that, he changed his approach to practice, just really encouraged everyone to just sit and sit in the simplest way possible, just following the breath. He wanted to go back to the basics. So that's taming the ox. That was his focus. That's great. We need that focus. Another teacher might emphasize where ox and ox herder disappear, that moment of realization of emptiness that so many people long for. And for me, it's the marketplace. And fortunately, we have a number of teachers here at MZMC. So if you're not too interested in that focus, you can hear from other teachers who may focus on other things. And of course, I try not to ignore the other 9 pictures. I have a responsibility to teach them all. And if I'm going to say it's possible for a teacher to get trapped in emptiness, I certainly don't want to be trapped in form. So, form and emptiness, it's at the heart of the Heart Sutra. Some of us have studied this for years. If you're new, I can tell you that it takes some time to get this in your bones, unless you're a truly extraordinary individual who can just get it in a flash. But it can't really be reached by conventional ways of study. But if you're new, I can try to appeal to you intellectually to suggest what it's about. And for those of you who have heard me talk about form and emptiness many times before, this is a new example, a new way to try to explain it. So think of your family of origin, the family you were born into or adopted by, or whoever took you in, whoever you wound up with, and the conditions of your first few years. In a sense, you're a product of the people who raised you and the conditions of your early years. For better or worse, you really can't escape it. You may have had an early nurturing atmosphere that had a great influence on you. You may have had some early trauma. You may have experienced growing older and thinking, oh my goodness, I'm just like my dad and not the part of my dad I want to be like. Sometimes it may seem that we're not even really an individual, that we are so formed by our family, our history, our environment, and our culture that we almost have no agency ourselves. But on the other hand, we can change. We can change through deep self-examination, maybe through therapy, maybe on our own, and maybe through Zen practice. I'm convinced, based on my experience, that this practice can help us to transform in very deep ways, that we can actually rewire our brain and change things that may seem to be unchangeable, like our early conditioning, so that we can truly become an individual. We can become a blank slate, a person with agency not bound by the past. So we can have this deep understanding that we're not separate from the environment in which we grew up, but then later, this deep understanding comes that we can be separate from our environment. So that first understanding that we're not separate from our environment, that's like understanding emptiness, interconnections of everything, our place in it. The deep understanding that comes later, that we really can change, is like an understanding of form. In the world of form, things really are separate. We really are, in a sense, an individual, and we can act that way in the marketplace. And that's the process. That's the healing. You realize interdependence, and you take that understanding of interdependence with you as you grow and enter the world. So, I'm shaped by my family and my early conditioning, but I can see that, and I can see the wonderful aspects of that. I can also see the extent to which it limits me, and I can see the extent to which I can escape, and I can go forth doing the best I can under the circumstances. I'm a product of my environment, and I'm an individual with agency. I'm both. Form is emptiness, and emptiness form. And the argument will continue. And just maybe sometimes the argument will cease for a little while because form is emptiness and emptiness form. And we can be exactly who we are beyond ideas of what we can't escape. We can be the product of our conditioning, but not be bound by it. And on the meditation cushion, what this looks like is, well, you'll see. Just do it. I'm not going to tell you. Just sit and sit. Listen to Dharma talks. Listen to talks by all 13 of our teachers, so you get all of the different points of view. And you will see. And that's what I have to say today. And we have time, and if anyone would like to, I would just love to hear from you. Folks online or folks here in the Zendo. Yes,
Sorry,
Ashley, hi.
Is the marketplace significant? Because in my mind, I think the marketplace is somewhere where the ox is going to get butchered for food.
Oh. Yeah.
If I was to rewrite it, I would say with bestowing hands, they go into a grassy field.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. I think they could have made a lot of other choices, right? The marketplace does, yeah, I mean, it can be a little disturbing. You think, after I get enlightened, I'm going to go to the Mall of America, which is going to be a challenge. But, maybe that's the place to go. But I think there are a lot of other things we could, rather than marketplace, we could say, I'm going to go into a public space where issues are debated, or I'm going to go out in the streets and see who needs help, or something like that. So I think it could have been a different metaphor, perhaps in when these ox herding pictures were developed, that was a pretty ready symbol. A marketplace at that time, there may have been a lot going on there besides just buying and selling. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Let's see. Yes.
Do all 13 priests in training talk on Sundays?
No, they don't. All 13 priests in training don't talk on Sundays because that's kind of that long training thing. Usually someone will be here, will be in training for 4 or 5 years before they'll be invited to give a Sunday talk. Yeah. And priests in training and others give talks on Tuesday evenings, which is kind of a good way to sort of hone your skills. And it's also wonderful. So thanks for bringing that up because it gives me a chance to plug Tuesday evenings. It's like this, except it's in the evening and it's more intimate, not such big crowds. And there are such great talks on Tuesday evenings. People really put their heart into them. They work really hard. So yes, we have we have a sitting on Tuesday evenings. Talk comes at 7:30. So I would encourage you all to check those out. Thanks for that question. Anything else? Going once? Going twice? Aaron?
Maybe you want to make a comment about green rockuses.
Good point. I left that out. Green rockuses. We have 3 people in our community who have green rockuses, and they are lay teachers. They are lay persons who were invited after many years of practice and many years of service to the community to become lay teachers. And that's a thing that happens in Zen centers in many places, and the green rakusu is becoming more and more common. So those folks can meet one-on-one with students and also give talks on Tuesday nights. Thanks, Eric. All right, well, I think probably this is a good place to stop. Thank you all for your kind attention.